Hello everyone, here is Rakesh Kumar Sharma, the science teacher, and today we are going to study 9th class science, chapter 2, Is matter around us pure? In today's class we are discussing about the different separating methods of a mixture, of different methods. In my previous video, part 1 and part 2, we have discussed about pure substance and mixtures, type of mixtures, homogeneous mixture and heterogeneous mixture. What is the difference between the homogeneous mixture and heterogeneous mixture? Solution, suspension and colloids. And about the concentration of a solution. How can we calculate the concentration of a solution? In today's class, we are going to study how the different techniques to separate the individual components of a mixture. We know in our day-to-day life, we see more the natural substances are found in as the form of mixture, and a few substances are found in pure form. And different techniques we are using. In today's class we are going to study how can we obtain the color component from blue or black ink. We know that the blue or black ink, that means dye. Dye is not a pure substance, it is a mixture of dye, color component and water. Second topic, how can we separate cream from milk? We are using milk in our day-to-day life, and our mothers in villages use the churner to separate the makhan, that means butter, from the milk. How can we separate? Third topic is how can we separate a mixture of two immiscible liquids. Immiscible liquids like water and oil mixture. How can we separate the oil from water? How can we separate a mixture of salt and camphor? Is the dye in black ink a single color? The different topic. The first topic is different from the fifth topic. Is the dye is a single color? First we are going to separate the dye with water, and in fifth topic we are going to separating the different colors of a dye, black ink or different type of other inks. How can we separate a mixture of two miscible liquids? Miscible liquids, that how can we separate a mixture of two miscible liquids? Like some salts are dissolved in water and other liquids. How can we separate the different of the mixtures, different components from the mixture? Seventh point is how can we obtain the different gases from air? Eighth topic is how can we obtain pure copper sulfate from an impure sample? I can give some names of the topics and we will discuss briefly in today's class. First, how can we obtain the color component from dye? This method is called evaporation. Evaporation. The method of separating the color components from water is called evaporation. Second, how can we separate the cream from the milk? This method is called centrifugation. Centrifugation. Separation of a mixture of two miscible liquids by filtration. We can say filtration. Filtration or immiscible liquids by the by separating funnel. And how can we separate a mixture of salt and camphor? This method is called sublimation. This method is called sublimation. And is the dye in a black ink a single color the different colors from a dye, this method is called chromatography. Chromatography. And how can we separate a mixture of the two miscible liquids? That means distillation. Distillation. How can we obtain the different gases? Fractional distillation. Method is called fractional distillation. And how can we obtain the pure copper sulfate? That method is called crystallization. It is called fractional distillation. I will explain the difference between the distillation and fractional distillation. Fractional distillation. And here is how can we obtain the pure copper sulfate from the impure copper sulfate. That method is called crystallization. Now the first point, how can we obtain color component, that means dye, from blue and black ink? We can do an experiment. Take a beaker and fill half of the beaker with water. Take a beaker and fill half with water and put a watch glass. Watch glass you can get from your laboratory. Put watch glass on the mouth of the beaker and put some drops of blue or black ink, which you are going to separate from water. Put some drops of blue and black ink we are going to separate from water, and heat the beaker and fix it on a stand and heat the beaker up to the evaporation starts. When evaporation starts, now a question arises in your mind: why do not we heat the blue or black ink directly? Because the evaporation start, we have to heat slow process, and if we heat the blue and black ink directly, the evaporation cannot be take place. So evaporation starts and the water change into water vapor and comes out from the blue and black ink. And after the last time, the residue is remains in the watch glass. That residue is called the ink, part of ink which water draws out from the ink. This process is called evaporation. Then now you can know, you have to want what is the definition of evaporation. Evaporation is changing of the liquid state to the gaseous state. Pause kar. Definition of evaporation. Evaporation means the process of liquids changing into vapors even below its boiling point. Normally the liquids change into vapors at their boiling point, but in evaporation some liquids like water can change into their vapor below their boiling point. That process is called evaporation. Again we can see the process of liquids changing into vapor even below its boiling point. How can it possible below the boiling point? Because the surface particles or the some particles of the liquid like water have more kinetic energy rather than the other particles. The moving particles which have the more kinetic energy, they that particles, moving particles of a liquid constantly escaping from the liquid to form vapor. This process, the upper surface of the water level particles, like in the oceans and in some rivers, etc., the water particles evaporate and make the clouds, which is the region of. Now we can conclude that the blue and black ink is a mixture with water and with volatile and non-volatile. Volatile means solvent, water, and non-volatile means ink, that is solute. Solute and solution, solvent, we have discussed in our previous classes that solvent and solute. Solvent is the mixture part of the solution which have the large amount, which can dissolve the solute particles inside it. So the second, how can we separate cream from milk? Nowadays, when we purchase the different type of the packets of the milk, the full cream milk, the tone milk, double tone milk, can you guess the difference between the full cream, tone and double tone? Full cream means that the milk which have the butter fully, and the tone milk, when the cream draw out from the milk one time, that is the tone milk, and the 2 times the cream drawn out from the milk, that is called double tone. How can we separate the cream from the milk? This method is called centrifugation. By centrifugation machine, we can do it in visit your nearby dairy and see how can the dairy person can take the sample in a test tube, and you can do it at your home also. When we take in a test tube the milk, and test tube takes in the centrifuging machine. Centrifuging machines, that type the machines are using for the rotating of the test tube. Like that you can see. For example, let's think this is a this is a test tube, and we take the milk sample in the test tube and we fit this test tube in the centrifugation machine, and centrifugation machine rotate the test tube, and when the rotate spun rapidly, the heavy particles or the denser particles are settled down at the bottom, and the cream particles, which are lighter than the milk particles, that are found at the top of the milk sample. This method is called centrifugation. You can do at your home by a churner. By a churner you can do, which is available at your home. Churner means मथनी आती है, उससे हम क्या कर सकते हैं, उसको हम अलग कर सकते हैं. Centrifugation. When the denser particles of a mixture are forced to the bottom and the lighter particles stay at the top when the spun rapidly. जब हम जोर से उसको घुमाते हैं तो डेंसर पार्टिकल नीचे जमा हो जाते हैं, एंड द लाइटर पार्टिकल्स आर स्टे एट द टॉप ऑफ द सैंपल और टॉप ऑफ द मिक्सचर. What are the applications of this centrifugation method? First, we can understand how can not we separate the mixture of the milk and the cream and the butter from the curd. How can not we separate? Because the size of particles is very less of the two parts of the milk and the cream or other two particles, and when they spun rapidly and the larger size particles or the heavier particles settle down at the bottom. Applications of the centrifugation used in the diagnostic laboratories for the blood and urine test. First use, when you go for a doctor and doctor suggests to test your blood or test your urine. In the laboratory we give our sample of the blood or the urine, then this process is used, centrifugation. Used in the dairies, we have learned this time, and used in washing machine to squeeze out the water from the wet clothes. Washing machines, when we wash our clothes from washing machine and we draw out our clothes, wet clothes, we find the dry clothes. Third point, the third method of separating miscible liquids. Immiscible liquids like water and oil. Water and oil separation are the immiscible liquids. We can separate immiscible liquids by using the separating funnel. In a separating funnel, when we take the mixture of oil and water, we know that the oil is lighter than the water, and the water is denser than oil. So according to the norm of the density, the water settles down at the bottom and the oil remains at the top. But we can separate by the simple method. So separating funnel is this type of the funnel which have the stopcock at the bottom of the funnel. We start the stopcock and water is coming at bottom side and draw out from that the separating funnel. And when this layer is reach here and here, here and here, when the separating layer of the oil and water reaches at the stopcock, we have to stop that the stopcock and change the pot then in which we are collected the water and oil. And after changing the pot, again the oil comes down and we can separate the oil and water. Application of this separation of the immiscible liquids by separating funnel, we can separate the mixture of the oil and water, and in the extraction of the iron ore from its ore. Do you know about the ore? Ore are the purest, ore are obtained from the nature directly by the minerals, by which we can extract the pure metals. When we purify the ore of iron, we take the liquefied state of the ore, and do you know some name of the ore of iron like hematite, magnetite? These are some examples of the ore of the iron. And the melted form of the ore, which are dense in the extraction of the iron ore from its ore, the heavier particles settle down, that is the matter form, and the lighter form or the impurities remains at the top, and we can get by this method the pure iron. Fourth process or the fourth method is how can we separate a mixture of the salt and camphor. In our previous chapter, in chapter 1st, we have understand that the three states of the matter: solid, liquid and gas. When we heated the solid form, particles get into the motion and the solid form change into the liquid form, and when again heated the liquid form, it converted into the gaseous form. And when cools the gaseous state, it converts into the liquid form, and when cools the liquid state, it converted into the solid state. But some substances like ammonium chloride, naphthalene, anthracene and camphor, these substances are directly changed on heating by the solid form to the gaseous form. This process is called sublimation. These substances are called sublimable substances. So we can separate the mixture of salt and camphor by this method, sublimation. We take the mixture of the salt and water in a petri dish and keep the petri dish on a burner, and before heating the mixture of the salt and camphor, take a funnel and keep the funnel inverted on the petri dish and close the mouth or the head of the funnel with a cotton plug. When we heat it, the mixture, the camphor get heated and change into the vapor state. Camphor change into the vapor state, and the vapor when goes upside, and when the vapor comes here and cools down. When it cools down, it remains on the walls of the inverted funnel, and we can get, after stopping the heating, the camphor on the walls from the inverted funnel. The sublimation substances, for example, sublimation means the substances, the process in which the substances can change the solid state into the gas state directly without changing any liquid state. For example, first example is camphor, second example is ammonium chloride, third example is naphthalene, and fourth example is Ncert. For example, we have to remember what type of the questions. In today's class, we have studied about the four method of the purifying or the separating of the constituents of the mixtures. The first we have studied evaporation method. Second method is we have studied centrifugation. Third method we have separating funnel, and fourth method is sublimation. The questions asked in the example, no type of the so long type of the questions doesn't ask, but some I will give some examples. First, some process are given and you have to write some examples like sublimation, like filtration, like centrifugation, evaporation, crystallization, chromatography, etc. And sometime other type of the questions are asked in the example. We will discuss in our next class. So 4 methods we have discussed today's class, and next class we will study about the remaining 4 methods: distillation, crystallization, fractional distillation, and fourth is the chromatography. We will discuss our next class, part 4th. So thank you for watching this video. Like and share. Welcome. Thank you.